You're listening to ayahuascapodcast.com.
We as a society are struggling with a true understanding of what we're doing here on planet Earth. We are taught as a society that it's important to make money and be successful and buy a home, of course, have a family, which is beautiful, but like there's very specific things that we look up to as a society. And when we don't have those things or we don't achieve those things at a certain age, we have failed, right? And I think we are so disconnected from the soul and the soul's journey and the soul's blueprint. And we don't have a real understanding as a society, whether that's intentional or unintentional, story for another day, where to access it. We're a soul having a human experience in a body with a mind as a tool. But we are enslaved to the mind, and the mind is being programmed every single day by media and everything around us. So I think inherently what the problem is we don't know what we're doing here. And each one of us, that is so different. I believe we're all here with our own divine mission and our own gifts, but we're disconnected from that. So when we are disconnected from that and we're out looking for all the other things we think are going to bring us happiness, we experience that depression. And I think when we can, and what I hope to be a source for people in my guidance is reconnecting with that information within that concept, and then how we do that, right? It's all here. It's in the heart. It's in the body. It's not here. And how to really find your soul's blueprint and live it really courageously, I would say.
Hi guys, and welcome to Ayahuasca Podcast. As always, we're the host, Sam Believ. Today I'm having a conversation with LanaRose Berger. Mm-hmm. Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yeah.
Okay. LanaRose is a holistic health advocate and the founder of Conscious Concierge, a wellness service that offers personalized guidance to individuals seeking alternative healing modalities. In this episode, I talked to LanaRose about her journey from TV and corporate life in New York to psychedelic work and helping people, about her culture shock and lifestyle shift from New York to Colombia, integration challenges and the emotional intensity post-ayahuasca retreat, karmic entanglements and ancestral healing, talk about contrasts between spiritual awakening and modern life realities, using ayahuasca for escapism versus true healing, societal disconnection from purpose and soul's blueprint, balancing material needs with spiritual calling, conscious entrepreneurship, and bringing purpose into existing businesses, and so much more. Enjoy this episode. This episode is sponsored by Lawira Ayahuasca Retreat. At Lawira, we combine affordability, accessibility, and authenticity. Lawira, connect, heal, grow. Guys, I'm looking forward to hosting you. Lana, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Wish I was there in Colombia with you, but soon.
You can always come back. You should come back.
Yeah, I'll be there next
month. So I met LanaRose at a panel that our friend in common, Jackie, organized about, 2 years ago now? It was on the topic of...
Oh, wait, 2 years ago.
Maybe a year and a half? Yeah, something like that. It was on topic of conscious entrepreneurship, and I was there talking about Lawira, and Lana was talking about her business and how we can make the world a better place. So, Lana, let's start with your story. You know, what brought you in this sort of different lifestyle and alternative healing modalities?
Yeah, well, I grew up in New Jersey, and in my 20s, I was working and living in New York City. My dad's from New York City, so it's always like a second home. But in New York, I was working in television advertising. That was my career. So I worked for, all the big TV networks like CBS and Nickelodeon and MTV and VH1, et cetera, Univision. And that was what I was doing at that point in my life. And it really fit that version of me. And during the pandemic, I would say was when I had the beginning of my awakening. And in New York. It was the epicenter of the pandemic. So things were really intense. And I was in a relationship and everything just felt like all the walls were caving in. And I started having pretty serious panic attacks. And it's from a lot of things. My fear of the pandemic, my fear of the relationship. The person I was dating was dealing with addiction. So it was a pretty serious subject matter to be quarantined with. And I just had my breakdown at that point. And all the doctors that I was seeing were really pushing pharmaceuticals for me to really come back to center and calm down. And I was taking Xanax a lot and it was giving me some reprieve. But I had this intuition feeling to seek deeper understanding. So I had called a friend, Eric Neese, who was on the very first Real World. It was a very big show in the States. And he was on his journey with ayahuasca for 20 years. So I called him and I was like, hey, all these doctors are telling me to take these medications, but I'm having this intuition feeling there's another way. What do you think? And he's like, how soon can you get to Peru? And I was like, this was my neighbor growing up, someone I really trusted. People definitely thought he went off the beaten path, he went from Hollywood to ayahuasca. So he was this very famous person that then was like weird and doing this drug, they were saying. So everything he said to me resonated so deeply though in my soul. Like everything that he said about why I was experiencing what I was experiencing, how it was here to show me things, vibration, energy. I attracted this person, this thing in my life, blah, blah, blah. So long story short, I went out to Colombia to clear my head a little. And when I was in Colombia, I went to Peru to go meet him to sit with ayahuasca. And when I sat with the medicine, it was like the roof was blown over my head. I just realized all those intuition feelings about seeking more and seeking a deeper understanding of why that had happened and why I was going through it. And I had turned 30, so it was like a pretty prolific time, in a woman's life. And I just thought everything was ending. And sitting with the medicine was like the beginning of like life part 2, And so the medicine opened up a lot for me. I stopped taking the pharmaceuticals. I didn't take any of the other ones they were suggesting me to take, which I understand why they were, And I went on a deep journey from there. In Colombia, I stayed there for 2.5 years and went down all the different holistic modalities. And that was really where I started my deeper spiritual journey.
Thank you for sharing that story. So first of all, congratulations on not taking the antidepressant route and got a long, slow decline and actually embracing something new and something unique. You remind me a lot of my friend Sam Lipman, who is also from New Jersey. He also worked in television, but he worked at Vice and like Rolling Stones. We're doing a documentary about ayahuasca now. He's an Emmy-nominated documentary director, and same story. Medications, living in that part of the U.S. specifically, it's like high-rise buildings, lots of noise, no nature, and very like go lifestyle. And a lot of people get depressed and they get put on antidepressants and then they get stuck there because it's so hard to then quit those antidepressants. So I'm curious, why Colombia? Why did you go to Colombia when that time came? Because Colombia is not that established as Peru or Costa Rica for some reasons.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And it was very divine. I was actually supposed to go to Mexico. So during the pandemic, I knew I needed to get out, right? I was dealing with that situation. So I looked up, where are people working remote, Americans? And I found this group called Wi-Fi Tribe. And they were like Remote Year, similar company, where everybody has their own respective job and they get together in one home, one hotel, and they work together. I found Wi-Fi Tribe and they were in Mexico at the time. And they called me and they were like, you can come for the month of February to Puerto Escondido or Oaxaca. And I was like, okay, I just want to be near a beach. So they're like, great, you can go to Puerto Escondido on the beach. 2 weeks before the trip is set, and I'm like really in a bad place. So I'm really looking forward to it. And they call me, they're like, I'm so sorry. The Wi-Fi here is pretty bad. If you're an entrepreneur, great, maybe that's okay. But if you have a corporate job, which we heard that you're the only one here with a corporate job coming, that's a problem, right? And I'm like, yeah, I have like client presentations with like $150 million on the line. I can't just like cut out the Wi-Fi, you know? And they didn't even know I was going. So they're like, the only thing we can say, because I was like, I need to go on this trip. And they were like, well, let me call you back. And they call me back and they're like, we just found out there's one spot opening in our other trip. And I was like, okay, where? In Oaxaca? And they're like, no, in Medellin. And I was like, what is Medellin? And they're like, Colombia. And I was like, is there a beach? And they're like, not in Medellin, but I promise you this will be the best decision of your life. And I was like, F it, I'm going. So I got rerouted to Colombia, rerouted to Medellin. The only thing I knew about Medellin was Maluma was from there and I loved reggaeton. So I was like, okay. But I was disappointed when I got there. And I remember getting off the plane like, okay, I guess I'll give this a whirl. And 3 years later, I stayed, moved there fully, and had the like literally beginning of an incredible life from there.
There's something about Colombia. It's like, you know, the land of magical realism where even people's perception of life sometimes seems somewhat psychedelic. As I like to say, like at Loire, we have two teams, the mostly English-speaking team, which is the ceremony team, and then the mostly Colombian-speaking team, which is like cooks and hospitality department. And I say that, well, everything that's in the English-speaking team, everything will be on time, and everything that's with the Colombian team, it might vary. It might be earlier or later because their perception of time is somewhat psychedelic, and there's just nothing you can do about it. They're very relaxed, which is there's something we can learn from it. So I believe somewhere in between New Jersey culture or like New York culture and Colombia culture, there exists this perfect way of seeing things.
Well, when I first got there, I was 10 years in Manhattan, right? Working in very corporate situations. Like we were prompt. And when I would get there in Colombia, I would go meet my trainer or like whatever I was doing, like to be at somewhere at a certain time. And I'd show up at the gym, like specifically at that time. And it was like, I would freak out, you know, if like somebody wasn't there and then they didn't do what they said. And I was like, what is up with this culture? Like I am here at 7 a.m. ready to go. And at 8 a.m. I'm a meeting. And I was so rigid when I got there because I was just used to that. I mean, in New York, by 9 a.m., you've had a whole morning. 5 a.m., you're at Equinox. You've meal prepped your breakfast. You've gotten on the subway. You've fought off 3 homeless people. You've gotten in your desk by 9 a.m. and you're ready to give a presentation by 10, you know? So I was like high strung when I got there, and everything about the culture taught me to slow down and just like relax, be grateful, be in flow. Like it was a whole other mindset.
Yeah, that's a great lesson in itself. So you go to Peru, you have your first ever ayahuasca experience. How did when was it more or less? How many years ago?
2021.
So 4 years ago. How did your journey go after that? From then to you, I'm assuming, working with more medicine. The bird just flew into my window. Working with more medicine, integrating ups and downs, the 100 steps forward, 99 steps back, you know, and talk to us about that journey and how did you stay motivated to actually not just do it for yourself, but start doing it for others?
Yeah, it's a beautiful way to put it, because it is just that. I think people think from the work, it's just you drink the medicine and everything's great. It's a process, right? And there's somebody I love, a friend of mine, who she always says, like, when your first sip of the medicine is the beginning. It's like the beginning of really starting to get to know yourself. And that's exactly what it felt like. When I drank the medicine in 2021, I was just like, I knew it. I knew there was so much more to life. I've always been very existential as a young girl. And I've always really thought about what we're doing here and why are we here and what happens when we leave. And I've always had that sort of matrixy lifting of the veil. So after the medicine, the veil was really lifted. And actually the first year it was kind of challenging because I was scared. I was like, what is happening? Like, for some people, when you awaken, it's disorienting, right? And so really having that support is crucial. I feel really, really blessed that I had some pretty key people in my life to help me through that process when I was like really wanting to go back. I really wanted to go back to unconsciousness, to that sleeping soul, because it was easier, it was easier to think like, if I just solve this problem and I get this job and I make this money and I get married and I have this house, everything's cool. I've achieved it. But once you start to peel the layer back, and for me, ayahuasca was doing that, I was like, oh man, this is a whole other thing that I didn't expect out of life, And it was really challenging. And also it was so beautiful in the sense that I started really, really diving deep into spirituality, not just with the medicines, with meditation, with going to different retreats. I've always been very explorative, and I've always been a person who's a part of many groups and many people and many things. It's really my gift, is to be like friends with so many people and in so many communities. And that was great. But that exploration was also confusing, So what I found through the journey quite often was, wow, this is so beautiful and this is so confusing. And so at some point, when you talk about the steps forward and steps back, it's like the medicine will show you what karmic entanglements and things you need to look at, where areas of you that are still stuck and need to heal. So that was all coming up, things I had thought that I dealt with in therapy. I was in therapy at a very young age. My parents got divorced when I was 6, and my mom was very spiritual, so she put me into therapy. So I had awareness over, okay, stuff with that, the stuff with this, but the medicine was bringing it up in a more vivid way, really, so that I could really feel it. So I would say having the right support was super crucial, and I would be very aware. I couldn't go back to being unaware. So I would still have similar patterns, because the medicine doesn't take away the patterns, right? But it shows you, so you can no longer hide from the pattern, right? It's like an addict sometimes that drinks the medicine and sees why they're suffering with addiction. They can go back and get high again, but it's never the same as when they were unconscious, because they know. So that's how it was for me with my things that were my behavioral patterns and things like that. So yeah, I would say what I found through the whole time, the same thought I always had was, wow, there's so many ways to explore yourself. There's so many modalities and teachers and healers. And how do I know which one is for me? How do I know if ayahuasca is for me now? Or maybe I've moved to a different space and now I should try this modality. And so that's the core theme that was ringing in my ears was like, who's the person I should go to for like all of this? And so after 4 years of being in the journey, I remember feeling like I was constantly trying to figure out where my place was in this world, because I knew from the very first sip, I knew this is where I belonged. But I knew I wasn't a shaman. I knew I wasn't a healer. I knew I wasn't a practitioner, because I spent a lot of time healing the body with functional medicine, naturopathic medicine. And I was like, maybe I'll be a... But then it all hit me. I was like, this is where my zone of genius is, helping people to know what's out there, what modalities there are, really integrous people in this work, and being like the big sister. Like, it's okay. I know it can be scary that we're awakening. Let me help you, and let me help you bring you to tools that can really support you on this journey. Because I know for me, I was scared and I was confused. And I know I was blessed with community, but it still wasn't enough in some moments. So that's how I created Conscious Concierge. And that's how it came to be fruition. I felt like there was a space for that to be in the industry, if you want to call it. And I knew that was where I belonged, that as that guide through the modalities.
Thank you. It's a great story. Something you said really resonates with me. Once you go to being conscious, there is no going unconscious again, or at least it's like you can use those escaping mechanisms, but as you're in it, you will feel even more guilt because now you know what's happening.
Even more. Mm-hmm. That's a great way to put it.
Another thing plant medicines do for you is they open you up to the emotions. Like I meet a lot of people, and myself included, that have the emotional dials tuned down close to zero. There is a better word to describe it, but it's not my mind right now. And once you bring it up, you start feeling more good emotions, bad emotions, and sometimes I'm like, stuff happens and I'm in so much pain emotionally, and I'm like, I just wish I was like I was before, where I just didn't feel anything. And there's also doesn't seem to be any way back. So you mentioned something that I don't know much about, karmic entanglement. What is that?
So I really believe, and I always like use different words when I describe this because I'm still working out like how I would label it. But I believe, and as you know, I know with the work of the medicines, a lot of the ideologies is that we have these cords connecting us to our lineage, right? And our lineage and our ancestors come here with their missions and their hopes and their dreams and their beliefs and their pains. And when they don't get resolved in that lifetime, I believe it gets passed to us, right? And I had a lot of both sides of my lineage were a part of major history and were involved in a lot of very heavy things like murder and war. And I always felt like there was a lot to sort through there, but we all have that. We all have these different strings that are still connected to our parents and our ancestors in general. And so I think the medicine does help shine a light. I think it's important not to stay there too long, because I think people are like, I got to clear my lineage, I got to heal my lineage. And I think at some point too, that can be a trap and a loophole people get stuck in. I think it's important to understand that our lineage has passed on fears, desires, hopes, and dreams. And we also get to resolve them in this lifetime. I feel like I'm resolving a lot for some of my ancestors. And at the same time, I think it's important not to stay too long in those entanglements.
Yeah, thank you. So you end up creating the conscious concierge, which, if I understand correctly, people come to you and then you help them find different healing modalities and in the right order. When do you normally recommend ayahuasca and to whom?
I never recommend ayahuasca outwardly. I only bring up plant medicine if someone brings it up to me. That's kind of one thing that I've gotten pretty solid on. I really feel it should be something that somebody is called to, because as you know, you can't go backwards, and it's really important someone's ready for that journey. So if someone says to me, hey, I've been hearing a lot about this, or I saw, you mentioned plant medicine in a podcast, can you tell me more about it? But if someone comes to me with anxiety and depression, I really don't ever say, you should stay with ayahuasca, because I believe that's me interfering with their own calling of the medicine. So, it's the same thing when someone reaches out to you and they're curious. It's like you're sharing the message, right? But I have never really felt like it's something that I should recommend, because I also feel there's a responsibility on my end to expand someone's consciousness. Maybe in this lifetime, they don't need it. They're not here to wake up. Although I do believe we're all here to wake up. And I think we keep going into the incarnations until we are awake. However, I think it's important that they have something in their soul calling them to medicine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very different. I just call everyone all the time. I know they might not come immediately, but at least planting the seeds. Yeah, I'm definitely more of a broadcasting approach. Like, I think ayahuasca is not for everyone, but it's almost for everyone at a certain point. But yeah, I'm you give me a problem and I'll tell you how to solve it with ayahuasca. But I know that there's other more gentle approaches.
Yeah. I think someone has to have the right support too. I think ayahuasca's growing in popularity. So there's a lot of people sitting and a lot of people communing with it, but we're also not in the jungle. So like for here in Miami and in New York, where I'm from, the society is not set up to sit with ayahuasca and just go right back into the concrete jungle. And I think that's what we're experiencing a problem too now. And I think people really need to understand that it's a completely new way of life. I physically couldn't live in New York after sitting with the medicine. And it's not to say you can't. I just think there should be some awareness of when you go through this process, a lot will change. And somebody needs to be ready for that and held and supported in that transition.
Yeah, it's a very good point, because we have people coming here, and now we started offering integration retreats where after a 1 week retreat, there is another 5 days of people just being here and just sort of soft landing to reality and using different modalities to integrate their experience, which is the gold standard. Like, it's amazing, people really love it, and then they go back home. But in the real world, not only people don't want to do that, not because they don't want to, because maybe they don't know they need to, or maybe it's expensive, or taking a vacation that long is also difficult. But people want to come to do 4 days, just do 2 ceremonies and heal immediately and never go back. That's kind of the mainstream approach, and that's kind of how we see the world in our lens right now. It's just like, if you take, for example, you've been giving antidepressants, so you take them and your depression is gone. So people think like, well, if I take this medicine, my problems are gone, and then that's it. But it's really hard to educate them that no, this is actually a journey that you're beginning. It's a very difficult one. It's a long one. It will be absolutely the best thing that happened to you. But how do you get people to do the work? So let's talk about that, and let's talk about sort of combining this newly found worldview while still being in US, because before the world changes and all of a sudden everyone starts drinking ayahuasca and being spiritual and doing all those things, and maybe we can have some kind of like government paid ayahuasca leave every year for 2 weeks. How do we heal? How do we leave? Like, how do you guide your patients or your customers through that?
Yeah. It is a good point, because we are seeing an uptick. And I think that there was some stat that it was like a couple million people have drank, maybe it was like 4 million people in the world have drank, when a couple Kat from Plant Medicine People was telling me when she first drank 20 years ago, it was like 500,000, and now it's like 4 million, something like that. I think, I am like a big safety police kind of gal. People always make fun of me and say you're like the safety girl, because I really, really, I lived it. I lived what it can be like when it's disorienting. And I think if we're really in this work and we're really about healing and humanity, we're really okay with also talking about the truth, which is people need support on this process. And people just drinking the medicine and going back ceremony is not guaranteeing you more consciousness. I mean, you can drink 200 cups, but that doesn't mean you're embodied and anchored and integrated in the learnings, right? And people keep going back for more instead of integrating the learnings. It's so important, or else we're just, it can be another escape if we don't treat it like medicine. Anything can be medicine and anything can be not medicine. And I think the differentiator there is intentionality and usage. And I think it's such a powerful tool. I think it's the most ancient technology we have on planet Earth, besides our inner intelligence system in our body. But yeah, I think that for me, with clients, whenever they come to me and they have an interest, I always have them circle back after and give them the options of where they can get integration support. Some people, everyone's so different. Some people have just like this incredibly, like they don't need the support psychologically the same way other people do, and other people, they do. So I always ask people to circle back and let's talk about what integration looks like for you. Is it working with someone somatically? Is it working with like a coach psychologically, a therapist? Is it working with, being more in nature. Like there's so many different ways we can go about it. But I do always encourage people, especially when they're considering going back so soon, is like my invitation would be to ask yourself, like, am I looking to plant medicines the same way I was looking to SSRIs, right? Or antidepressants? Again, it can be a very similar thing, is like, are we using the medicines to really go deep within? Are we using the medicines to check out? And I think that is the most important conversation right now that we could have.
Yeah, I've met lots of people that do this, where they use ayahuasca as this short-term relief. And I've done it myself to a certain extent in the very beginning, where I was depressed and I would go and drink ayahuasca, go somewhere for a weekend and then feel better and then get depressed again. And eventually ayahuasca itself kind of showed me why and what was causing the depression, and then kind of gave me the way out. So I guess I was lucky in that way, where I didn't have any integration. I didn't have any knowledge about integration back then. The ceremonies I'd go to, they would be like very Colombian style, where you show up with your own mattress and your own pillow. You share buckets with like 5 other people, and they give you the cup and you figure it out yourself. So very set up, rustic way of doing it. But eventually it resulted in good things for me. But I know it can also go wrong. What I do like about ayahuasca as opposed to other psychedelics is, one time I was going too hard. I went to the jungle for 2 weeks and I was drinking medicine and I was like really seeking something really hard. I didn't really know exactly what it was. And one of the ceremonies ayahuasca was like, "Oh, you're back so soon." Like, I gave you homework, you didn't do it. Like, why? And they gave me a terrible trip. So there is, with those medicines that do sort of possess a very specific spirit, they do tend to also guide you, and sometimes it's with some tough love.
Yeah, I took a 2-year break from the very first time in Peru because when I went back my 5th time in Colombia, I really, truly wanted to meet like-minded people. I didn't really want to go sit with medicine again, but I went because I was like, I just want to meet like-minded community. And I had a really rough journey. And I remember the medicine was like, showed me all the things I hadn't integrated and said, like, come back when you're serious, like, why are you here? So I took 2 years until I sat back with the medicine. And after 2 years, when I sat, I went through another year sitting with the medicine. And this last New Year's, I was not feeling called to it. And I was like, I really want to be with my friends. So I went and I sat with the medicine, and I had the most intense, scariest, hardest thing I've ever experienced as a human being on planet Earth at this point in life. And I knew that I didn't need to sit with the medicine at that point. So I'm back on a break, and maybe it will be 2 years. I don't know. But I just think that's so important too, is like, really only I can help you and I can ask you questions, and so can you with your people, but only you really know if you're really called to sit with the medicine again like that. For you and for people who work with the medicine, it's different. You're a student of the medicine, right? You're studying and you're learning. But yeah, I think people, I think it's really important to guide people on that properly.
Yeah, I personally drink ayahuasca once a month, and I've been doing it for many years now. So, but it is a different journey. I'm exploring sort of things ayahuasca showed me about healing, and it's a very slow process. I definitely don't want to be that guy that, like, I had ayahuasca 2 months ago and I'm a shaman now. Not that even I'm trying to become a shaman. It's something completely different. It is, but it is in that direction.
Yeah, you're holding a lot of space. Like, as the owner, it's a huge responsibility, like a huge space holding, huge responsibility. So I totally get why you're like studying with the medicine.
Yeah, it's a different approach when you go from being a student to sort of trying to become a teacher in a way. So I'm assuming you deal with a lot of people with issues, and our society is pretty sick. It's interesting you said that 4 million people all over the world did ayahuasca, as opposed to 500,000 a few years ago. and it definitely feels like it's increasing exponentially, which I think is a good thing. If they go to proper places, they actually know what they're doing with their experiences. But it's like it's still less than 0.5%. It's like it's so tiny. I mean, my dream is to have everyone drink ayahuasca yesterday and just see what happens today. But I know we differ on that. But
No, I think overall, I think it would be beneficial for all of society. But it would be wild to witness that happen.
It'd be lots of work for all of the integration coaches.
That's where my mind goes.
But what patterns do you notice? Like people you work with, what's the most common issue? What is the 20-30% of people in US are depressed, anxious? What are the common patterns and common sequences you take people through in your guidance? And then like what's the what are the things you recommend the most, how they go through it, and how long does it take?
Yeah. So the first part of the question, what are the most people suffering with? I think what most people are suffering with, I tend to attract a lot of people in corporations like the world I came from, New York, Miami, the fast lane, kind of the high achievers, executives, maybe entrepreneurs, things like that. I think what most people are struggling with, if I had to really pinpoint what it really is, even though it comes out in different symptoms and forms, I think we as a society are struggling with a true understanding of what we're doing here on planet Earth, truly, at its core. We are taught as a society that it's important to make money and be successful and buy a home and of course have a family, which is beautiful, but like there's very specific things that we look up to as a society. And when we don't have those things or we don't achieve those things at a certain age, we have failed, right? And I think we are so disconnected from the soul and the soul's journey and the soul's blueprint. And we don't have a real understanding as a society, whether that's intentional or unintentional, story for another day, where to access it, right? We're a soul having a human experience in a body with a mind as a tool, but we are enslaved to the mind, and the mind is being programmed every single day by media and everything around us. So I think inherently what the problem is we don't know what we're doing here, and each one of us, that is so different. I think we're all here. I believe we're all here with our own divine mission and our own gifts, but we're disconnected from that. So when we are disconnected from that and we're out looking for all the other things we think are going to bring us happiness, we experience that depression. And I think when we can, and what I hope to be a source for people in my guidance is reconnecting with that information within that concept, and then how we do that, right? It's all here. It's in the heart. It's in the body. It's not here. And how to really find your soul's blueprint and live it courageously and really courageously, I would say. Be in your own path and your own lane, whatever that looks like. And really know what are the things that bring joy and happiness, what are the things that really matter, and what are we really doing here? That's what I would say.
That makes a lot of sense. I've heard tens and tens of different versions of that sort of truth relayed to me by people after seeing it through an ayahuasca ceremony, and then sometimes they say, oh, there's this big spaceship and we come down here to do something and then we go back. Sometimes they say it's like soul or God, whatever language they use, different people from different parts of the world. But it does seem to always be around that. And I do believe it now as well, that we're not just here to eat, sleep, and procreate and die. It is, though, really hard to actually embody. Even in the spiritual business, and living spiritual life and helping more people discover it, because the society around us is, I mean, I need a car and I need to put petrol in my car. And it's like how do you talk to people when, let's say they're a successful CEO or any white collar job or entrepreneur, and they have all those things and they are, established, but they're not happy. And then they come to you and they go through this healing journey, and then all of a sudden they don't want to do this work anymore. And maybe their gift is to, I don't know, be a light worker or something like that. Like, how do they go from, what's the transition? Have you seen anyone go through it? Or where do we also get reasonable and say, like, well, you have kids and you have to feed them. Like, where is the balance between what soul wants and what body wants?
Yeah. Well, to answer that, I would also say, I think, yes, part of the problem is because of those things I mentioned prior. I think the other reason people are depressed and anxious is because of like we were talking about, those karmic entanglements, like the emotions and the things we've been carrying for our families for so long. So I think the journey is both. The journey is the soul's journey, and it's also a journey of healing those different parts of ourselves that have not been addressed properly, that are creating stuck energy in the body. So to go back to your question, it's a very important one, and one that's very top of mind for me, because as a person who was making a great living, going from doing that to doing this and giving up the big salary and all that was not an easy journey. People make it look super easy, like I found my passion and now I'm just thriving and living my life. I was severely going through it when I gave up that income, and it was very challenging. And I would not recommend if somebody's not prepared for that. And I mean, I think there's a couple things. Your soul's purpose may not mean you need to quit your job tomorrow and go live on an ashram. My partner, he's in real estate. He works in the matrix, and he's on his soul's journey to figure that out. But he's still working his job to feed the family and do the thing, and he's always thinking about that with our future kids. And I think there's a glamorization of the path too, of like, oh, well, we don't need money when we found out our soul's journey. It's like, I mean, I live in Miami. You know what I mean? Like, we need money. So it's a catch-22. And I think everybody's journey with that looks different. I think if somebody wants to stay in their path, in their career, and it feels supportive for them to do that, or they need to, I think that there's a lot of other things they can do to tap into things that truly light them up, like hobbies and charities and different ways of finding purpose and meaning that aren't like leave your job. I had a client recently, she's CEO of a big, very prominent company. And she's very high profile. And she came to me. She ended up sitting with plant medicine. I set her up with a private experience, and she is in charge of thousands of employees, but she couldn't function because of her anxiety. And she wasn't looking to go leave her job tomorrow, but she had a lot of things she had never even looked at within her lineage, her own family stuff that was really staying stuck in her body. So we worked on that. And that was liberation enough for her to really be able to get back into what she was doing and release anxiety. So I think there is the path of, a lot of people sit with ayahuasca tend to want to leave their corporate job because they want meaning and purpose. I know I did, but at the same time, that's not always an option for people immediately. And it's also it doesn't mean you have to become an entrepreneur in spiritual work if you sit with the medicine. Everyone's here for a completely different path. It's just all about figuring out what's your path.
So that brings me to the topic of conscious entrepreneurship, something that we talked about in that panel. So let's say somebody is an entrepreneur and they're successful. How do they make it more conscious? What is the, without like completely destroying something or like quitting a career, how can you make it more soulful?
I think it's all about intentionality. So understanding the intention behind what you're doing and what you're creating, you know, like finding ways to make things sustainable, good for the earth, good for people's mental health, physical health, like different things. You know, if you're selling clothes and you love to sell clothes, maybe there's a way you can look into more sustainability. You can look into the fabrics and make sure they're really healthy substances and they're not causing more toxins in the body. Or you can look to be involved with a charity and really find what giving back looks like to you, or what it looks like to you to be purposeful and impactful, and incorporate that in your business, right? I think if everyone did that a little bit with their business rather than just quitting, I think we could make this world an incredible place. I tried to do that in television for a while. I started feeling like, well, I don't want to brainwash people to buy commercials for products that aren't healthy, right? I just didn't want to do that anymore and be part of that machine. But while I was there, I tried to have a lot of conversations about, you know, the language we're using and how we're spending our time outside of work. Like, can we do more productive workshops versus like getting drunk at happy hour, you know? And I think there's so many ways we can incorporate more intentionality in what we're doing. It doesn't have to be serving medicine. We can find our own purposeful way to stay in our path.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Instead of like changing everything, maybe change the direction a little bit. And I know it's hard because, for example, in your industry, in your previous industry, in the, like Sam, he says he wants to make documentaries that change the world, but all the networks want to buy his murder docs because that's what sells. And like middle-aged American ladies, they just want to watch this. So it's like, how do you change the middle-aged American ladies to want to watch something that is less negative?
They made that, like media and society made that be something that people want to watch, right? They promoted that and they made that's programming.
But it is a two-way thing, because if people, for example, want to buy Doritos and eat them every day, and the companies obviously want to sell Doritos, so yeah, they just keep pushing each other in the wrong direction, right? They keep making Doritos more palatable, and people keep getting more addicted to Doritos.
People want to blame doctors a lot. I know I used to be like this, like, oh, the doctors just keep prescribing the medicines like candy. Well, why do you think? Also, yes, they were trained in pharmacology, but also people are like, I just want to lose weight, put me on Ozempic. And they're like, well, some really good doctors, my uncle's an incredible doctor. It's like talking to them about, okay, well, have you changed diet? Have you gone to the gym? I don't have time. Just give me the Ozempic. So it's exactly to your point. People want to blame society, the doctors, et cetera. But we're all responsible for our decisions.
It's a chicken and egg situation. For example, if you're a very conscious CEO and you start making your clothing from a really nice ecological material, but then people are not buying it because now it's 10% more expensive than the competition, yeah, that's difficult. So we do need, it almost feels like there needs to be some kind of one big event that just kind of pushes everything in the right direction. Or I don't know. I really think about that a lot in the future, and because I have 3 kids and them growing up in this AI age, like from all perspective, for example, as a business owner, we're struggling with kitchen staff. Like there's big rotation, people, it's just a difficult work. People get tired and they want to quit, and there's no easy way out of it. We tried everything and it's just difficult. So I'm thinking, like, if there's a robot that can cook, I'm buying it next day. Even though I'm in this conscious business and it doesn't really sync up, but because there's like problems and reality. So it's like a very complex situation. So how do you see the future? What is going to happen? What should happen, how it should happen so that everyone becomes conscious and happily ever after?
I'm very involved with AI. Me and Jackie and I both are part of a business network community of AI entrepreneurs that really have consciousness at the forefront. I think a lot of people are scared of AI I think it's just like anything, we can either embrace it or be scared of it. And I've been embracing it a lot, and it's become like a really great tool for me. I think intentionality, right? Just like anything. So if we start using AI and we start having it write all of our captions and all of our blog posts and all of our messaging, then I think we're losing our voice, and our voice is a vibration. It's an energy, it's a frequency, and it is meant to carry to the people it's meant to carry to. I think we could lose that if we use it too far, right? So I use it for ideas or things like, hey, I have this idea like of working with a social club here. What do you think are different ways I could do that? Versus, can you write all my captions for this? Because that loses the essence of being a conscious person in this work. I think we are nearing a deeper awakening. I think we're currently in the Great Awakening. So I think society is waking up. I can tell people are reaching out to me that I would have never thought with the things I'm talking about. People wanting to get off pharmaceuticals if they can. I think that's important to say too, and not demonize that as well. I think people are really seeking meaning and purpose. I think we're in the age of Aquarius, where that's all about like truth and things coming to light. And I think we're there. So I think we are going to be ushering in this new world. I think all of us that have been going through this are being primed and initiated into holding the energy for the new earth. I think we're going to be a big part of that, all of us in this path. So I feel those words like very deeply. I feel the responsibility of that. And I think that all we can do is be there to support people, and allow people to awaken at their own pace. When I first got in this work, all I wanted to do was shove ayahuasca down everyone's throat, wake everybody up, get everybody out of bed, out of their slumber. And if they weren't, I was like, oh, they don't know this path. They're crazy. And that was a trap too. That's judgment. And everyone's soul is here to do different things and awaken at different times. And so while I would love all of society to join us, I also feel, I let them come to me and just have more trust in their own processes, and also keep working on mine and elevating my consciousness and my vibration so that I can support more people who choose to go on the brave path of waking up in this lifetime.
Beautiful. Let's start wrapping up on this positive note. Tell us more about your business and how people can find you and reach out to you.
Yeah. So my website is www.yourconsciousconcierge.com. And then Instagram is @yourconsciousconcierge, and TikTok is Conscious Concierge. The business is all about the service, I like to call it, is really all about people having a place to come when they don't know what's out there, when they don't know what's next, or they're curious what their options are in the world of healing or well-being. Most people know traditional medicine or pharmaceuticals, but there's a lot of other things we can explore. Plant medicine, of course, and a ton of other modalities. And it's a place people can come for that guidance and come to be connected to these people, places, and things, and have a big sister to be there for them as they go through this process of getting to know themselves deeply and awakening and healing.
Cool, Lana. Thank you so much. It was a very interesting conversation. Thank you guys for listening. As always, we do the host, Sam Believe, and I will see you in the next episode. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to support us and psychedelic renaissance at large, please follow us and leave us a like wherever it is you're listening. Share this episode with someone who will benefit from this information. Nothing in this podcast is intended as medical advice, and it is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This episode is sponsored by LaWaira Ayahuasca Retreat. At LaWaira, we combine affordability, accessibility, and authenticity. LaWaira, connect, heal, grow. Guys, I'm looking forward to hosting you.